everybody, it's Mandy from Trouble Forge. So we are going to do stewed tomatoes today. One of my last projects, I do still need to do plum sauce and plum jelly, and I'm sure I'll have a couple other little lingering things, but this should be one of our last bigger projects. So we have our tomatoes here. I've had these for probably a week and they really need done. So we have tomatoes, onions, and peppers. That's what we're going to put in our stewed tomatoes. So I am deviating a little bit from what the typical process would be, where you throw them in a stock pot and cook them and blah, 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 because I don't want to cook them twice. I don't want to cook them on the stove and then cook them in the pressure canner. So Bud and I are cutting up our tomatoes. So we have a bucket for tomatoes, a bucket for peppers, and a bucket for onions. We're probably going to need another bucket for tomatoes because I'm sure we're going to fill it. I have almost 2 bushels of tomatoes that we're going to do. I have a half a bushel of onions and a peck of peppers. So we're just going to split that up as best we can. As I mentioned, these have to be done in the pressure canner, or I'm going to be doing them in the pressure canner. I guess you can do whatever you want. So basically what we're doing is we are just cutting the tops off. So we're coring them, and then we're cutting them into quarters and putting them in our buckets. And then we'll move on to the peppers and the onions, and I'll show you how we're going to do this process. All right. So Bud cut our peppers for us. Like I said, I just had a peck's worth. There's not a ton. You can core them. You don't have to. I didn't because we don't care. I'm going to do these 3 gigantic onions, just mix them in with my peppers, and then we're going to get our jars filled. All right, so I'm going to put a teaspoon of sugar and a teaspoon of salt in each jar. I'm going to put a small handful of the the peppers and the onions in each jar, and then I'm going to fill it with tomatoes. I realize that this is not the way that everyone does it, and that's fine. You don't have to do it this way. That's how I'm doing it. I don't know exactly how many jars I'm going to get. I prepped 15. I have probably, let me see, these are 8 gallons. So in theory, I have like 6-ish gallons of tomatoes, which means I should get like 24 quarts. So I might need to wash up a few more quarts just so I can evenly distribute my peppers and onions, but that's the plan. All right, so I have 25 quart jars here. I went with wide mouth because I quartered the aromas and I felt like that would make the most sense. So I put in, I don't know, maybe an inch-ish worth of peppers and onions in the bottom of each. I'm going to put a teaspoon-ish, maybe not quite a teaspoon, maybe like half a teaspoon, a little splash of sugar and salt in each jar, and then we're going to fill them with tomatoes. Right. So as always, I will put the actual recipe in the description. I will add notes about how I modified it to make it work for what I wanted to do. I am going to put a squirt of lemon juice in each one just because, I don't know, I'm sure someone has comments about this. Whenever I do tomatoes, I just feel a little bit better if I add a little bit of extra acidity. So I probably went with like a teaspoon of sugar in each and like half a teaspoon of salt. You can skip those things, you can add them, you can do whatever. I know that we're going to appreciate that little bit of extra sweetness, like when we put these on top of mac and cheese, which is going to be delicious. We're going to appreciate that. I mean, in a teaspoon in a quart jar, like whatever, we're getting almost no sugar like per person, so I'm not worried about like some exorbitant amount of sugar or something. So I'm gonna put isn't this so pretty? I am going to put a splash of lemon juice in each one, and then we're gonna fill it with tomato. All right, so this tool is super handy. It's just a wooden, I don't really know what it's actually for, to smash down your tomatoes. So I'm kind of just like cramming my tomatoes in there, and we're just topping these off. I think I did pull out, so I did all wide mouth. I had 2 that I am just putting the overflow into. They're not going to have the peppers and onions. I did put the sugar and the salt in. Whatever, we'll just have 2 that don't have those things, which is fine. I didn't feel like digging for more wide mouths, and these 2 were readily available. So I'm going to finish topping these off, and then we're going to get ready to cook. All right, so we're doing 1 inch of headspace on these. I try to be really picky about doing a 1 inch headspace when I'm pressure canning, because that's a recommendation, and because every time I don't, I get siphoning, and then it's a mess, and then you get ones that don't seal, and then you have goo in your water and whatever. So try to do the 1 inch headspace. So we have all these jars ready to go. I have 3 inches of water in the pressure canner. I have the 930, I think, yeah. The 930 All-American. I love this one. It holds 14 quarts, 14 quart jars. So don't be confused, because however many quarts of water it holds is the way they describe it, and that can be confusing. So it holds 14 quart jars. I have the first rack in. I'm going to get 7 quarts in, put the second rack in, put in the next 7. We're going to have to do 2 rounds on this because I have 25 or whatever it was. I need to get a second pressure canner. That may seriously be my next big canning purchase because one is just not sufficient. Anyway, we're going to get these in. They need to be at 10 pounds of pressure. I think the time is 10 minutes, but all right, just kidding. So it's 20 minutes. 20 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure, so we're going to get these. All right, so when you put your pressure canner lid on, I always describe it as like when you do lug nuts on a car. So you want to kind of like go around and tighten them. So you just put your lid on, line these notches up, put these, well, if it was truly lined up, it wouldn't have a problem. So you put these up. Sometimes if they're not going in, it's because they're spun down too far. So if you just spin that out, maybe. All right, so you just spin it out until it goes up and then spin those on. So I'm gonna go around and do all of these. We're gonna turn the burner on, wait until the steam comes out. When the steam comes out, we're gonna set a timer for 10 minutes. And then when that timer goes off, then we're gonna put our weight on. I'll show you the circular weight, and we're gonna put it on at 10 pounds, which means the 10 is gonna go over the steam hole. So I'll show you that process when we get there. For now, we're just going to lock this on, turn the heat on, and wait until we get steam. All right, so we've been running steam for 10 minutes. We're gonna take our weight here. The 10's on the bottom. I know you can't see that. And I'm gonna pop that on here. I'm trying not to burn myself. All right, so we put our weight on there for 10 pounds. So when that starts to jiggle, this should be at about 11. They say 10, but it's like 11. So when that starts to jiggle like 4 times a minute, give or take, and that's at 11, that's when we're gonna start our timer for 20 minutes. All right, so the first round is done in the pressure canner. So I took the weight off. You have to make sure that this is down to 0 before you mess with this at all. So that was down to 0. Obviously it stopped hissing and all of that. I took the weight off. I am currently unscrewing these. We're gonna take these out. We're gonna put some cold water in the bottom because my jars are cold, so I don't wanna put cold jars in this hot water. And then we're gonna do the next round. All right, so it's 10:05, not unusual. Got my last round of stewed tomatoes on. We are almost done. I actually only had one that had a good amount of siphoning. I had one more that had a teeny, but otherwise they look really, really good. So that one got a little bit more siphoning than I would tend to like, but it happens. Honestly, if everything seals and there's just that one, we might just pop that one in the fridge and we'll just use it this week. Nobody will be upset about having an open can of stewed tomatoes in the fridge to use. All right, so it's late, as usual, no surprise. We're pulling the last of these out of the canner. So I am really excited about this. This is pretty awesome. So if you have questions about pressure canning, I know that pressure canning can be kind of intimidating. So if you have questions about pressure canning, let me know in the comments. I can try to help you out. I definitely highly recommend the All-American. I love this double stacker. It allows me to do so much more at once. If you have questions about doing stewed tomatoes, as I said, I know I did my process probably a little bit differently than other people do, which is fine. So I will drop the original recipe in the description so you can follow that to a T. If that's what you'd like to do, you can follow the way I did it, whatever makes you feel good. And if you have questions about either of those ways, let me know. I'll see you next time.